Hello, everybody. It's Monday. Hope everybody made it through their weekend safe and sound. Hope everything's good with you. Yeah, this is part 2 of that video from yesterday. Trump's compromised, in my humble opinion. And as I've heard from a few contributors, start saying for entertainment purposes only. Just saying. People are getting shut down, and I don't want that to happen because I have a lot to say. So if you're new to this channel, welcome. Give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Seeing as tariffs are going to land tomorrow, things aren't going to be cheap. And I guess I'm cheap because my channel's free and doesn't cost anything. Just saying. And all my hangers on, thanks for hanging on and welcome back. So how about part 2? This came from an article from Foreign Policy. Michael HIRSH wrote this December 18th, 2018. Now, we left off with a bunch of shit that Trump was doing there, and we're gearing up towards the beginning of 1990, and we're going to carry through up to when he started running for election. Ready? Okay, in 1992, Trump was over $1 billion in debt. So what does he do? He held a great big giant gala in honor of himself. The party favors included a picture of him on a stick. So I guess you could say that was the shitty end of the stick, just saying. Now, the theme was from Rocky, and that song was just bouncing off the walls at the casino, and Trump appears, this was so trashy, in great big red boxing gloves and a cape, and he smashed through a paper backdrop. Yeah. As the MC hollered, "Let's hear it for the king." This is back in 1992. Man had grand ambitions, and they're carrying through. One casino exec said that his boss returned as a winner. Biographer Michael D'Antonio said Trump was all but washed up as a casino owner and developer, and the banks were pretty much done with him. By this time, he had burned through all his father's fortune. Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City and the beautifully grand Plaza Hotel in New York were bankrupt. Trump Shuttle went nippeless erecti in 92, and 2 more bankruptcies followed. Well, there was actually 4 because he went bankrupt 6 times. His would-be borrowers began filing for protection from their creditors, and he became too toxic to most lenders. Actually, the word they used was poison. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the money was drying up. Deutsche Bank helped him out, but it still took him almost 10 years to try and get over his slump. There was a big thing with Deutsche Bank where they owed, the Russians were involved, and there was $10 billion of shady friggin' transactions and everything else. And Deutsche Bank had to cough up something like $638 billion because of shit that Trump was doing and the Russians. But anyway, that's a different story. He was so desperate and terrified of being poor that he met with his brothers and sisters after his dad passed, June 5th, 1999. His dad died of embarrassment is what his dad died of, just saying. I'm thinking he pressured them to settle his father's estate as soon as possible and sell it all off. But Daddy Fred said that was against his last wishes. It was in his will. So he even steals from the dead. Ghoulish bastard. His businesses were collapsing like paper houses in the rain. In 2004, Trump hotels and casino resorts filed bankruptcy to the tune of $1.8 billion of debt. Enter the foreign money. He made deals particularly with wealthy Russians and former Soviet republics, and the Trump loves, Eric, Don Jr., and Ivanka were all part of that. Don Jr. actually said on camera that they don't have to depend on American banks anymore, because they were doing an interview about his dad's bankruptcies and stuff like that. Well, we don't have to worry about American money anymore. The Russians, in quotes, make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets. Former Trump architect said, in view of what he knew from the inner workings of the Trump organization, that he couldn't get anybody in the United States to lend him anything. It was all coming from Russia. His involvement with Russia was way deeper than he acknowledged. A former real estate partner said overseas money came in the form of new real estate development and purchasing Trump condos. I think part of it, said his real estate partner, was he was toxic to the banks, and that personal guarantees on loans weren't worth the ink in his Sharpie. That's me adding that part, by the way. This is when he came up with the Trump brand and all the gaudy merch, because he couldn't get money to build anything anymore, so he started hawking all that shit. Trump vodka, bankrupt. Trump games, out of business. Trump steaks, less than 15 months. Everything he touched turned to shit. The Trump show was folding faster than a cheap tent, until Mark Burnett, the apprentice, came along. Now, there was a lot of shady shit went on that show, and Mark Burnett has all of the file footage. So while they're releasing files like Epstein, JFK, and whatnot, maybe they should make Mark Burnett release his files on The Apprentice. That'll be an eye-opening, racist bastard. Not Mark Burnett, but Trump lumps. Google Noel Kassler. He's a comedian, but he also worked as a personal assistant on The Apprentice. He's got some juicy stuff. He did an interview with Political Voices in 2024. Well, he did a few of them. But anyway, so they say no collusion. The folks in Trump's campaign circle, including the Trump lumps, Don Jr. and Eric, Ivanka and Jared, were contacted at least by 14 different Russians. And then on November 15th, 2015, Michael Cohen was approached by some Russians offering political synergy between the Trump campaign and Russia. It's just suggesting that, I don't know, that meeting that they should have, they said there should be a meeting between Trump and Putin, and it would have a phenomenal impact. Like what, getting him elected in 2016? Not only in political, but in business dimensions as well. This Trump Moscow is still on the books, I don't know. By this time, the Russians have been involved for over 3 decades. Another former real estate partner said his 90s revival really began in the early 2000s with a company called Bayrock Group, which rented a suite of offices just 2 floors below Trump. And the 2 Bayrock investors changed Trump's luck around. One was Taviv Arif, a former Soviet official who had a bottomless pit of money from the former Soviet former republics rather. And the other investor was a Russian-born Felix Sater, who pleaded guilty in the 1990s to stock fraud in a huge scheme involving the Russians and Trump. But Trump was never mentioned. Money talks. Sater walked. Trump's last good year in business was mostly legal business, was way back in 1988. After that, he sold his soul to Putin. He made really stupid business decisions, just like he's doing with your country. And the Russians came behind him with the mop and bucket and cleaned up all his shit. All while Trump sat out there for the cameras and did the waving and the ribbon cutting, and they all lined up with their little ribbons and his little gold shovels, and he became the face of disgrace. So yeah, the Russians backed him and had all this money in his account. So it would appear that he owned all that money so he could attract lenders for bigger projects like Trump's Soho 46-story condo building. But the residents were suing his ass off because he wouldn't fix anything. Elevators went down, and Trump decided they weren't going to get fixed and they could just walk up to the 46th floor. A lot of these people were like in their 70s and 80s. And he did that on purpose because he couldn't throw them out because they had that lease. But he wanted them to be forced out. They didn't go. They did not give up, but the Russians came to his rescue. And Trump ended up not owning Trump Soho. He had an 18% stake in it because they used his name. That's all. It was the Russians that did all the rest of the work. They used his name on that building, and it's been chipped off since. They've taken that down. That's how most of his money is made now. He sold his father's name to the highest bidder. He didn't build anything anymore. The Russians did. He just slapped his name on it. Make him feel important. And that big old tacky Trump, whatever the hell the building is, he gets paid 18-20%. But when you got like a $600-700 million building, 18% is not too shabby. By 2016, Trump was so far up Putin's ass, in my opinion, it was time for payback. He put his hat in the ring, and all of a sudden, a tsunami of foreign money came flooding in by the way of money launderers from Russia, former Soviet republics, who bought up his condos, and funny enough, nobody ever moved in. Funny how that works. The same was in Trump's Ocean Club in Panama, Ocean Club International or whatever. Ivanka designed the interior, and she had videos on it and how she made the suites look really pretty and the spas and the lobby and all this stuff. And she lied her face off about Soho and this one, saying, oh yeah, you better get in here. We're like 75% sold, we're 80% sold, when there was less than 20% sold. She was trying to get more people in there. Didn't work because their name was starting to smell really bad. So Panama took his name off there too, and I think there's still a big pissing contest between Trump and Panama because now he wants the Panama Canal back because I think they're suing him for back taxes and stuff like that he owes. All of that foreign aid pouring in has made him beholden to Putin and the Saudis with the arms deals he did with Jared Kushner and all the rest of the shit. That was Trump in there wiggling around. But I think Jared's more greedy, so he pushed a little harder. They were having 4 a.m. pillow talks, him and the Saudi prince. 4 in the morning, which makes Trump totally compromised. He is a shell of a president who is now, he has to get down and beg other democratic countries like Zelensky, why aren't you saying nice things about Putin and Russia? And he's begging the G7, which is going to be held here in Canada in May, to let Putin back in. I guess he's praying that his daddy Vladdy rather, doesn't release any surveillance videos of when he was in Russia without Melania. And the two Trump boys were there too. So I wonder if there's any, because there's cameras everywhere, in every room, in every hotel in Russia, especially when they went. So I'm wondering if there's any tape. They don't mind showing Melania Starkey's on a friggin' bed. They don't mind spreading that all over and laughing at her and everything else. And every time they do that, Trump ups the ante to get something for Russia. You noticed? So he says they spend $40 to $50 million. They buy apartments from me. Am I supposed to dislike them? There was one shady deal that he did in Florida where he bought a house for $40 million. And he sold it to a Russian billionaire, Dmitry Rybolyev, for $100 million. At the time when real estate house prices were tanking. So you would almost think that would be a campaign donation or something, wouldn't you? So yeah, he's been a shady lady for a long time, that man. And he's just trying to get his base to say, I'm doing good for you, I'm doing good for you. Maybe they should read that new budget that the House just passed, without Democrats, I might add. But yeah, that's a little more into how shady Trump is and how much he is beholden to Putin, and he's willing to do anything. I mean, over $2 billion. Maybe that's why they paid Jared $2 billion. Maybe he could get his father-in-law to get on board more. Just saying. So anyway, thanks for showing up. Thanks for tuning in. I love you all. Don't forget to be good to you first so you can be good to somebody else. And cheers, dears. Nan loves you. And please, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.